Nene. Well, what about our personal relationship with the rand? It affects us all, even if it's through the petrol price. To discuss, perhaps there's no one better than author Maya Fischer French. We'll also catch up on her recently released book, Maya on Money. Maya joins us from our Cape Town studio. Good evening, Maya. And we often look at the macro movements, interest rates, our economy importing too much, and that of course has huge implications because of the rand. But bring it home, what does it mean for you and me, for ordinary people?
You know, unfortunately, Francis, if the rand continues to devalue at this rate, it's going to be felt on the shop stores, in the shop stores. And the goods that we import, including food, are going to become more expensive. And I think the real one that we're going to see in the shorter term is the petrol price, because of course the oil price in rands is going to get higher, and that's going to have an implication on the how much we pay to fill up our tanks. And you know, earlier this year we had that great relief. We've been seeing the petrol price coming down, but I think we could see that reversing very, very quickly. And that's really going to hurt consumers' pockets.
So even if you're not traveling abroad, you should expect a possible hole in your budget, because we so quickly get used to interest rates going down, the petrol price going down, and we get comfortable, don't we?
Absolutely, and I think people often think that a weak rand is just about people who can afford to go overseas, but it's not. It really is about the cost of living, and it will have an impact. You know, Francis, if you think back to somewhere like 1998, where we had that massive rand shock, and what that did to interest rates, simply because the inflation rate went up so substantially that the Reserve Bank was forced to hike interest rates, and that had a massive effect on our economy. It had an effect on homeowners, it had an effect on people borrowing. So again, this is a short-term drop. We need to see what actually happens and if the rand stabilizes from here. So I wouldn't run off, you know, saying this is a major panic, but certainly continued depreciation in the rand we will start feeling.
All right, let's talk about your book, Maya on Money, giving practical, sensible advice. And I do love the personal element. It started with job losses through your own adversity. You came up with your story, and I think your passion to help others that comes through as well. Tell me a bit about the backstory.
The backstory. So, you know, Francis, I've been writing in newspapers and in columns for about the last 12 years. And a lot of that is an engagement with readers about their financial situations, about the things that are really affecting them on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, people often think that because you're a financial journalist or because you worked in the financial markets, that your finances have always been really, you know, exactly where they need to be, and you've always had this great plan. And I found that we had a massive shift in our finances as a household when in 2004 I had just had a baby, we'd bought a new house, and both my husband and I lost our jobs in the same year. And there isn't really any financial plan that isn't going to be massively derailed by those kind of major life events. And going through that experience, from going into debt, from having those massive overdrafts, we managed to get ourselves out. And that was part of, I think, the thought process behind the book, was also to share some of those stories and some of those experiences, so that people out there, and there are so many people out there who are struggling to make ends meet, realize that there is a way out as long as you take action. If you don't take action, unfortunately, the situation will just get worse. Do
you think there's something of a taboo around personal finances? I mean, you spoke about, and I know these people, stockbrokers, who talk about big bets, stock tips with each other, but not their own mistakes, not the fact that they may have a credit card that they can't afford the incredible drinks that they're buying at the moment.
Exactly, and I think that was something, you know, when I worked in the stockbroking industry, it was something that I always really bothered me. We would have, you know, we'd have men who would come to us and admit that they hadn't put enough money away for a timer, but they didn't know how to tell their wives. Here they were, they may be trading on the market, exchanging stories about tips and trading tips with friends at the dinner party, but they weren't having that real conversation about what was really going on in their finances. We'd have young people in their 20s trading in the markets, but who had massive credit card debt. So there was always, to me, this disconnect between your daily finances and then this kind of JSE hype that was going on. Especially, you must remember, I was in the markets in the late 90s, where everything was kind of, markets were going up. This was before the dot-com bubble. And I think really what my book is about helping people with those day-to-day basic financial decisions that they have to make. Things like when you buy a car, how do you finance it? If you have a credit, how do you develop a credit record? If you have children, how do you teach them to save? What should be in your will? What does your marriage contract mean to you? So those are the things that, we really, really do deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I don't think that there is always enough information out there. And I don't think South Africans are really informed enough about making sure that they are not making major mistakes in those areas of their lives.
Well, I'm going to ask you for some of that sensible advice for free. If people are out there thinking of big ticket items, a car or a house right now, just give me some of the top things that they should think about.
I think one of the things that I really pick up, and as I said, this book really is about the conversations with readers over the last 12 years. And one of the things that I pick up a lot is the car debt. So a lot of young people, they start working and they get the salary and they want the fancy car. It's generally a BMW, I have to be honest. And they've got these massive repayments. So maybe 6,000 Rand a month. That's just the repayment for the car. Then there's insurance on top of that of maybe another 2,000 Rand. Then there's petrol of another 2,000 Rand. Before they know it, this car is costing them 10,000 Rand a month to keep on the road. And this is starting to have a major impact on the rest of their finances. They're starting to struggle to put food on the table. They're starting to perhaps fall behind on other issues like mortgages, or they're even unable to apply for a mortgage because the car debt is so high. And I think I've always said with this book, if there's one thing I achieve, and that is to get a 20-something-year-old not to buy the big expensive car, I think I have achieved something. So I think that is definitely one of the big areas that I pick up is car finance and the impact that is having on many young people. And then with home purchasing as well, a lot of people look at that mortgage repayment. They forget about all the other costs that go into buying a home. And that's not only your transaction costs up front, which is transfer fees and bond registration costs and all of those things, but also just the ongoing costs of keeping up your house well maintained, paying rates and taxes. Those rates and taxes have been going up substantially. Electricity's been going up substantially. And I'm getting letters from readers now saying it's not the mortgage that's so much of a problem, it's the running costs of the home that are really, really eating into our budgets.
I think we underestimate all those costs. What if you're doing okay? There is a saying that you need credit to get credit. You need a history, and I know that when you go through applications for mortgage bonds and things like that. So should you have a credit card if you don't necessarily need it?
I think the first thing is that the banks have changed a great deal over the last few years, and much of that's to thank to the National Credit Act. And they now have something called what they call a credit light score. And they will actually look at the way that you transact with them as a client at the bank. So if they can see that you don't have any missed debit orders, they can see that you're not struggling to meet your expenses at the end of every month, because your bank account really is a track record. So, and also what really, really helps is to have a debit order going into a savings account, because first of all, it shows that you can meet monthly repayments and you don't renegade on those. And secondly, it shows that you're able to have the disposable income to actually save, and possibly that means you could take on more expenses like a home. So I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to go and take our credit. What you need to do is to develop a good track record with your bank in terms of the way you manage your finances. And then in terms of an actual credit card, I tell the story, Francis, in the book about me and my biscuit habit. I love biscuits. And I always promise myself when I buy a packet of biscuits that I'm just going to have one a day with my cup of coffee. It never, ever happens. Within 2 days, that biscuit tin is empty. And my waistline is definitely not better off for it. And some people are like that with credit cards. They promise themselves they're only taking the credit card for an emergency and they won't use it every day, but they just don't have the discipline. And I think if you are that kind of person, if you're the biscuit equivalent, a credit card equivalent of my biscuit story, then I really think a credit card can get you into a huge amount of trouble, and I would just avoid it.
I'm the same with biscuits, chocolate, chips, everything. Maya, I presume that you're hitting hard on savings, as you always do, but because we're running out of time, just one last question. Somebody told me the other day, a young woman, she said, I'll be okay because my mother taught me to be stingy. And I thought that's quite good. She was saying she didn't want to be in debt, things like that. But what about generosity? Is there room to be very careful and still to be generous and enjoy the things that you love?
I really think that that is a very important point, because some people think that it's all about just watching every cent and not spending any money, and then they're actually just miserable. And I think we must remember that money is also a facilitation for enjoyment. So we mustn't look at this as something evil and apply some sort of value system to spending money. But what I think it has to be part of a financial plan. And I talk about that a lot in the book, because I have my own story about the cappuccino article that I wrote once, saying, do you know that your daily cappuccino costs you about 6,000 Rand a year? And people said, hey, don't touch my cappuccino, because my cappuccino means a lot to me, and it's very valuable to me, because it's that time out of the office, it's a moment with a friend, and it's something that I value. And I talk about that in the book, and I say, don't make it all about being scrimping and stingy. Make it about the balance in life. What do you value, and are you spending, most critically, are you spending money where you find value, or are you just wasting it?
Thank you so much. Great and valuable advice. Maya Fischer French talking about her book, Maya on Money.